Good afternoon, everyone. This is Jeff Rumberg. I'm a managing partner with MetricNet, and I will be your host for today's webcast on Service Desk Key Performance Indicators. I want to welcome all of you and thank you for participating in our webcast today. Before we get started, I have just a few administrative announcements to make. During the presentation, all of you will be in listen-only mode. However, if you have any questions during the webcast, you can type them in the dialog box that appears in the lower right corner of your screen, and I will pause once during the presentation to answer questions. Additionally, I'll remain on the webcast at the conclusion of the presentation to answer any final questions that you might have or that I did not get to during the first Q&A break. This webcast typically lasts about 90 minutes. So for those who have other commitments later in the day, I should be wrapped up by about 3:30 or so Eastern Time in the United States. Now, I see that quite a few of our existing clients have joined us on the webcast today, and I want to thank you for that. For those who are not familiar with MetricNet, let me give you just a brief introduction. MetricNet's core business is benchmarking. We perform benchmarks for a variety of industries and functional areas. My role in the company is to manage the service desk, desktop support, and call center benchmarks for MetricNet. The work we do for service desks worldwide spans the gambit, from benchmarking and best practice assessments to consolidation studies and outsourcing analyses. Typically, the service desks that we work with are looking to optimize their performance, and we help them achieve those objectives through benchmarking. Now, for those who have not been to our website yet, I want to encourage you to go and take a look around at MetricNet.com. One of the unique features of our website is that we offer a free membership that gives you unlimited access to all of our online content. This includes our metric of the month, our webcast recordings, white papers, and presentations. All you have to do is complete a short form, and you'll be enrolled as a free member. Each time you visit our website thereafter, you can go directly to our resource library to access all of our online content absolutely free of charge. Now, since the question of how to benchmark comes up in every webcast we conduct, I'll preempt the question right now and give you just a brief overview of MetricNet's benchmarking lineup. There are three ways that you can complete a benchmark with MetricNet. First, there are what we call our peer group benchmarks. These benchmarks compare your service desk, call center, or desktop support performance to that of a unique peer group. These are our custom benchmarks, and they're very comprehensive in scope. Secondly, we have what are called our industry benchmarks. If you're only interested in industry benchmarking data, you can download an industry benchmark directly from our website. Just go to MetricNet.com, click the Shop button, and you'll see our industry benchmarks that are available for download. And finally, for those do-it-yourselfers, you can purchase a benchmarking data file in Excel format and conduct your own benchmarking analysis. Now, regardless of how or when you choose to benchmark your organization, I want to encourage all of you to connect with MetricNet on social media. We're active on all the major social media sites. We put out a steady stream of posts and tweets, articles, discussions, and presentations that are designed to enrich the community of IT service and support professionals and to provide you with tools, insights, and information that you can use to enhance your professional careers. For those who would like to follow us on Twitter during the webcast, use hashtag MetricNetLive to participate and share your thoughts, key points, questions, or just follow along with us. Now, for those who are attending the HDI conference in Orlando this coming April, I wanted to make you aware that MetricNet has been selected by HDI to deliver two presentations at this year's conference. The first presentation is about key performance indicators for desktop support and how you can use desktop support KPIs diagnostically and holistically. This is session 309, and it's scheduled for April 2nd at 3 p.m. The second presentation is about leveraging KPIs to drive a high ROI in service and support. This is session 607, and is scheduled for Thursday, April 3rd at 2:45 p.m. For those who are interested, we'd love to have you attend one or both of our sessions at the conference. Also, if you're interested in scheduling a meeting with MetricNet at the conference, you can do so directly on our website. Just go to the URL shown here, metricnet.com/HDI-2014. And you'll see a tab that pulls up a calendar where you can reserve a meeting time with MetricNet. Now, one final note before we get started, and this is particularly important for those who wish to receive a copy of today's presentation. When you exit the webcast, a brief survey will pop up on your screen. please be aware that only those who complete the survey will receive a copy of today's presentation. This survey provides us with valuable feedback on the webcast. It's only 3 questions long, and it takes about 15 seconds to complete. So if you would do us a favor and answer that survey at the end of the webcast, I'd be very grateful, and in return for that courtesy, I'll send you a copy of today's presentation. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Now, over the years, MetricNet has had the good fortune to work on literally hundreds of service desk benchmarks and desktop support benchmarks worldwide. And one of the advantages of doing that many benchmarks is that we have built up the most comprehensive database of IT service and support metrics in the industry. Now, this gives us a lot of insight into the key success factors of the industry's top-performing support organizations. So it's worth pointing out right out front that everything you see and hear today is empirical in nature. There's nothing hypothetical, academic, or theoretical about what I'm presenting today. It's simply based upon what we have observed in the industry, having completed literally thousands of IT service and support benchmarks. Now, I want to introduce you to a common set of key performance indicators that we see all the time in the service desk industry. We've organized these metrics into 6 categories. We have cost metrics, quality metrics, productivity metrics, agent metrics, service level metrics, and call handling metrics. Now, there's 25 KPIs on this page, and as I mentioned, these are the most common key performance indicators, but there are literally hundreds more. This is not an all-inclusive list by any stretch of the imagination. Now, as I get a little bit further into this presentation, one of the key themes I want to communicate is that when it comes to key performance indicators, less is more. There's a lot of KPIs on this page, and it turns out that most of them have marginal value at best. There are really only about 6 or 7 key performance indicators that you really need to understand and track and trend on an ongoing basis to successfully manage your service and support organization. Now, you probably all heard this expression: if you're not measuring it, you're not managing it. There are variations on this theme, things like what gets measured gets treasured, but there's a whole lot more to the story than just a pithy expression. There's lots and lots of data that is collected in this industry. But unfortunately, most service and support organizations don't conduct much analysis on that data. And as a result, they don't gain much insight from that data. And as a further result, they don't take any action from that information. So historically, what we found is that the approach to service desk key performance indicators emphasizes measurement. In fact, 75% of the effort goes into measurement, but only a small amount is spent on analysis, roughly 15%. And even less on prescription, that is developing action plans, and then even less on acting on that information. But over the last 3 to 5 years, what we have seen in this industry is a very different paradigm, a very different approach to managing key performance indicators for the service desk. And it basically turns this pyramid upside down. And it de-emphasizes measurement, but emphasizes analysis, prescription, and action planning. So as you move up the pyramid on the left, or up the inverted pyramid on the right, you have increasing value. So naturally, it makes sense to de-emphasize the measurement component of key performance indicators and to re-emphasize or overemphasize the analysis, action planning, and action. Because ultimately, key performance indicators are nothing if all they do is allow you to compare yourself or track and trend your performance. The real value of key performance indicators lies in their ability to help you diagnose both strengths and weaknesses within the support organization and to act intelligently on those strengths and weaknesses. In other words, key performance indicators should inform intelligent management actions that drive continuous improvement in the service and support organization. So that brings us to our central question today, which is this: how do we turn service desk key performance indicators into a competitive advantage? How do we use them to become better and faster and cheaper? And you've probably heard that expression before: better, faster, cheaper. It's not just a cliche. Those really are the 3 dimensions of competition. Better means higher quality, faster means quicker cycle times, and cheaper means lower cost per contact. Now, we're going to answer this question in a few minutes here, but before I do, let me define what we mean when we talk about a world-class service desk or when we talk about best practices. A world-class service desk has 4 characteristics. The first one is that it consistently exceeds customer expectations. And what that means is that the call quality is consistently high and customer satisfaction is in the top quartile of all service desks worldwide. But being high quality by itself is not good enough. You also have to have costs that are below the industry average levels. So we look at cost per contact being below industry average levels, and we look at minimum total cost of ownership. That is a high first level resolution rate. And I'll explain the difference momentarily between first level resolution rate and first contact resolution rate. But the second component of our best practices definition is that the service desk has to have costs that are below the industry average level. Thirdly, and more subjectively, the service desk will follow industry best practices. Now, the good news is that the industry best practices are pretty well defined and documented. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to figure them out on your own. You simply have to identify them and then follow those industry best practices. What we're presenting this afternoon are the best practices related to key performance indicators in service and support. As I showed in a diagram a few moments ago, there are other success factors related, for example, to best practices in IT service and support strategy, related to best practices around technology and around process and procedure. But today we are focused on those best practices around performance measurement. The final component of our best practices definition is that every transaction adds value. It produces a positive customer experience, and it drives a positive view of IT overall. So the first two components are very measurable. They're very objective. The final two components, although subjective, they are a very important part of what it means to be a world-class service desk. You follow industry best practices, and you add value on every single transaction. Now, on this chart, I want to give you an alternate definition of what it means to be world-class. We've got two dimensions here. The x-axis shows the cost per contact for the service desk. The y-axis shows quality as measured by customer satisfaction. Now, the blue dots here are extracted from, they're representative data points extracted from our database. And you can notice immediately several things about the locus of points here. First, you'll notice that there is a correlation between cost and quality. Furthermore, the correlation is not just a spurious correlation, it is a cause and effect relationship. For some organizations, cost will drive quality because you may be cost constrained. In that case, your quality will be the result of your spending levels. In other organizations, quality is what drives cost. They have a little bit more resources, and so they can drive quality higher, and it's quality that drives the cost. But regardless of whether it's cost driving quality or quality driving cost, it's important to recognize that there is a cause and effect relationship here. Moreover, the cause and effect relationship is non-linear. There are diminishing returns associated with this. So what that means is that as quality increases, cost increases disproportionately. That is why the curve begins to flatten out as you get to higher and higher quality levels, higher and higher cost levels. But the real point of this diagram is to communicate what being world-class is all about. We get asked almost every day, what does it mean to be a world-class service desk? What speed of answer, what cost per contact, what customer satisfaction, what first contact resolution rate must I have in order to be considered a world-class service desk? The answer is it depends. It depends upon the resources at your disposal. We have literally seen service desks that are spending $5, $6, $7 per call, but they end up achieving a pretty good level of customer satisfaction given the limited resources that they are spending. And we would consider that to be a world-class service desk because they are achieving the best possible result with the limited resources that they have. By contrast, there are service and support organizations that are spending $100 or $200 or even $300 per inbound contact, yet they do not achieve what we believe to be the level of quality that is possible when you're spending that amount of resources. And they would not be considered a world-class service desk, even though their absolute performance might be better than the service desk that is only spending $5 or $6 or $7 per contact. So being world-class is a relative concept. It's relative to the resources you have at your disposal. And the real question is, are you deploying those resources, those dollars, that headcount, the technology, the office space, the desktop technology, etc.? Are you deploying them in such a way that you achieve the best possible result? That's what being world-class is all about. And if you achieve that result, you will end up on this upper curve. We define this as the best-in-class performance curve. If you end up on this upper curve, you are optimized. And what that means is that you cannot increase quality any further without also increasing your costs. It also means that you cannot reduce your cost without having a negative impact on quality. So being world-class is about using your resources in the most efficient way possible to achieve the best possible result for the end users that you are supporting. Okay, we're going to shift gears now, and I'm going to introduce our model for KPI best practices. There's a four-part model that addresses performance measurement, diagnosis, prescription, which is action planning, and then implementation, all arrayed around the central objective, not of customer satisfaction, but of customer enthusiasm. We found that customer satisfaction in this industry is a losing proposition. If you're not consistently creating enthusiastic customers, you're not surpassing, you're not achieving the objective that a service desk can and should achieve. Now let me give you a medical analogy here to sort of explain this diagram. If you go to see a doctor because you're not feeling well or because you're going in, say, for an annual physical, the first thing that doctor is going to do is measure you. Doctor might measure your blood pressure, might measure your temperature, might do an EKG work, might do some blood work, etc. But if the doctor says, well, gee, your temperature is high and your blood pressure is elevated, go home and get better, that doctor really hasn't done anything to help you. So a good doctor is going to take those measurements and use them diagnostically to figure out what is going on with you and use that diagnosis to develop a prescription, not necessarily a prescription for drugs. It might be a prescription for a change in lifestyle, that is, stop smoking, drink less, sleep more. It might be a prescription for surgery. It might be a prescription for drugs. It could be a prescription for a lot of things. But it's up to you as the patient to implement that advice. Now this works in a continuous cycle in the service desk industry where you are measuring, using benchmarking to diagnose your performance, developing action plans to continuously improve your performance, and then implementing those action plans to achieve world-class levels of performance and ultimately surpass customer expectations to achieve not customer satisfaction, but customer enthusiasm. Now the four-part model addresses measurement, which is about measuring the service desk on an ongoing basis, diagnosis, which is about benchmarking your service desk and doing a gap analysis at least once a year, prescription, which is about defining the actions to close the performance gap, and then implementation, which is acting on the insights that you gain from the measurement and the diagnosis to achieve world-class performance. So let's look first at performance measurement, and I will reintroduce the chart that I presented a few minutes ago. It's a long list of KPIs. There's about 25 key performance indicators on this page, yet as I mentioned earlier, less is more. So the metrics that really matter are the ones that are shown here on page 19. Let me quickly go through these, and then I want to show you some examples of each of these key performance indicators. We start with the foundation metrics, cost per contact and customer satisfaction. We call those the foundation metrics because ultimately everything you do in service and support boils down to one of two things. You're either containing your costs or you are trying to drive a higher quality customer experience. Nothing else matters. So viewed through that lens, you can greatly simplify the decision-making of a level 1 service desk by recognizing that every decision you make should have the long-term effect of either containing or reducing your costs or improving the quality of the customer experience. Nothing else matters. So whether you're making a decision about headcount or technology or a project that you want to fund or your organization structure, simply ask yourself this question. Does this decision, will it drive a lower cost or at least contain our costs, and will it drive a higher quality customer experience? If it doesn't have one or both of those two effects, it's just not worth doing. As simple as that. Now I know that sounds very draconian, but the reality is for any service and support organization, whether it's desktop support, whether it's a service desk or any other service provided by an organization, cost and quality is the ultimate objective, containing your costs and driving a higher quality customer experience. Now if I'm doing a benchmark or an assessment for an organization and I find that the costs are high and the customer satisfaction is low, I can't operate directly on those metrics. In other words, I can't simply reduce cost without understanding why it's high, and I can't drive a higher quality customer satisfaction unless I know why the customer satisfaction is low. So the next two metrics, agent utilization, are the underlying drivers of cost and customer satisfaction. Agent utilization drives your cost per contact, and your first contact resolution rate drives customer satisfaction. So these are considered to be diagnostic metrics or underlying drivers. If your cost is high, the answer or the reason is usually that the agent utilization is low, and if your customer satisfaction is low, the general cause or the most likely cause is that your FCR, first contact resolution rate, is going to be low. The next metric is a TCO metric, first level resolution rate, which is a proxy for total cost of ownership. The higher your first level resolution rate is, the lower your total cost of ownership is going to be. And I've got an illustration of that, which I'll get to in a few slides here. Then we've got agent job satisfaction, which a lot of people are a little bit surprised by that metric to see it in the short list of the most important metrics. Yet agent job satisfaction is a bellwether metric. It has implications throughout service and support, and it has a ripple effect that impacts almost every other metric in service and support. High levels of agent job satisfaction have shown to be correlated with high levels of customer satisfaction. They are also correlated with lower handle times and hence lower cost per contact, and they are inversely correlated with absenteeism and turnover, meaning that as agent job satisfaction goes up, your absenteeism goes down and your turnover also goes down. So what's not to like about that? It's a metric that has ramifications for almost every other key performance indicator in service and support. Moreover, it can be managed proactively. It's not something that just happens by accident. It truly is something that can be managed through coaching, training, and career pathing. And again, I'll develop that theme as well as we get further into this presentation today. The final metric is actually an aggregate metric called the balanced scorecard, which aggregates the prior 6 metrics that I've just shown you and introduced to you, and it rolls them into a single overall indicator of service desk performance. And I'm going to show you an example of a scorecard here momentarily. Now, for those who are interested, we do have white papers on our website. If you go to MetricNet.com, we've got a white paper on service desk key performance indicators, and we've got numerous other white papers for service and support as well as for call centers. They're always free of charge. You can go to our website and download those white papers if you'd like to read up more on benchmarking and key performance indicators. Now, the first metric I'm going to introduce is first level resolution rate. I'm going to jump around a little bit on this chart here, starting with first level resolution rate. The reason this metric is so important is because it has implications for total cost of ownership. What I'm showing here on page 22 is a hierarchy of cost in service and support. Last year in North America, the fully loaded cost of resolving a ticket at level 1 was about $22. When that ticket got pushed out to desktop support, the cost of resolution was an additional $62, meaning $62 in addition to $22 if the ticket came through level 1. If the ticket was pushed out to level 3, you would incur an additional $85, level 3 being an IT group such as applications or networking, the NOC, etc., an additional $85 to resolve. Field support, when you have to get into a vehicle and drive somewhere to resolve the issue, you're looking at about $200 per ticket. And when the vendor's involved, on average, the cost of resolving a ticket is about $500. So the expression in the industry, get it done at level 1, is not just a catchphrase. There's true economic value in that expression. And to the extent that you can resolve issues at level 1, you are going to be reducing the total cost of ownership in service and support. Now, the key to making this work is to have a SPOC, a single point of contact service and support organization. What I'm showing on this diagram is a user community out here on the left-hand side. We've got the service desk right here, and then we've got N-level support, desktop support, field support, level 2 support, and vendor support. Now, in order to make SPOC work, in order to have a successful SPOC organization, the enterprise needs to take an end-to-end view of user support. You need to give the customer a single point of contact for all IT-related incidents, questions, problems, and work requests. The service desk is the SPOC. Now, this doesn't mean that they solve every problem that comes in. In fact, far from it. Rather, they are the traffic cops, if you will. They triage the tickets, that is, they decide which ones are most important and triage them appropriately. They are responsible for resolution at level 1, if and when possible. They are responsible for effective handoffs to end-level support. They coordinate the resolution and facilitate the resolution, and in many cases they also close the tickets. Now that last point, ticket closure, I know that many of you close tickets outside of level 1, and that's acceptable, but there has to be some sort of a closed loop that ensures that tickets are being addressed and closed within the agreed service levels that you have. Finally, to make this work, desktop drive-bys, flybys, snags, you may have heard that vernacular before. This is when there's a desktop support technician and an end user grabs the person and says, hey, I'm trying to do something in Outlook. Can you help me do this? Or I'm trying to make this work in Excel. I'm trying to turn columns into rows. Can you help me make that happen? The proper approach there is for the desktop support technician to say, you need to call the service desk, get the ticket logged, and if they need to dispatch me, they will. And I realize that in many organizations that are used to having desktop support technicians roaming around and are used to these drive-bys and flybys and snags, that is in fact a difficult thing to do. But the reality is you have to break the organization of that habit in order to have a true SPOC, because the more bypass there is, that is, the more incidents and questions that are bypassing the level 1 service desk, the SPOC model, the higher your cost of support is going to be, because you will be resolving more issues than you should be at level 2, level 3 field support, and vendor support. So there are a number of key SPOC principles to keep in mind if, in fact, you wish to minimize your total cost of ownership when it comes to level 1 support. Now that brings us to our first polling question of the day. And that polling question has to do with first level resolution rate. And the question is this: do you track first level resolution for your service desk? Today's polling question. And by the way, for those of you who are logged in today, we've got a record crowd. It's great to see all of you. We've got more than 20 countries today represented, numerous countries from Europe, Latin America, Southeast Asia, as well as, of course, the United States and Canada. Some of you are dialed in the middle of the night your time. Those of you who are in Australia, Japan, Singapore, and other countries in Southeast Asia, thank you so much for joining us here today. Glad you could make it. I'll just shout out to a few of you who've joined us. Robbie Gage, thanks for joining us today, and this is in no particular order. I'm just calling out some names. David Rotman, great to see you here. Leon Garner, glad you could join us today. Pam Cross, thanks for joining us. Tim Proctor, great to see you on today's webcast. And Yolanda Ayala, glad you could join us today. Okay, if you haven't voted on this, do you track first level resolution rate for your service desk? Please vote on this, and I'll go ahead and share the results of that poll with you. And here's how you voted. 63% of you are tracking first level resolution rate. Another 30% of you are not tracking it, and then 8% of you not applicable, presumably because you're not associated with a service desk. Now, this is a very good result. We've got about 2-to-1, the ratio of yeses to nos. As recently as 2 years ago, that ratio was just the reverse, meaning that about 2/3 did not track first level resolution rate and 1/3 did track first level resolution rate. For those of you who are not tracking it, I want to encourage you to strongly think about tracking first level resolution rate, because again, it is a proxy for total cost of ownership in service and support, and the higher that number is, the lower your cost of support is going to be. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close that poll down, and we'll move on in our best practices discussion. Specifically, I want to talk a little bit about a metric called percent resolved level 1 capable. Now, the percent resolved level 1 capable is really a desktop support metric, but it's an important metric to help understand total cost of ownership in service and support. Essentially, the metric is this: if desktop support is handling, I'll make up a number here, 5,000 tickets a month, and they determine that 1,000 of those tickets could have and should have been resolved at level 1, then the percent resolved level 1 capable is going to be 20%, because it's 1,000 tickets over 5,000 tickets. 20% of the tickets they resolved could have and should have been resolved at level 1. Now, those tickets represent defects. And any time a ticket is pushed from level 1 to desktop support when it could have and should have been resolved at level 1, you are incurring additional costs. Remember, on average, it's about $62 of incremental cost when you push a ticket from level 1 to desktop support. So this is an important metric at desktop support. Moreover, it indicates the value of single point of contact. And what I've shown on this page are approximately 100 data points. The blue diamonds represent the percent resolved level 1 capable for Spock service desks. And you can see that the average percent resolved level 1 capable is 15%. The fuchsia squares here represent the percent resolved level 1 capable for organizations that do not follow the single point of contact support model, and you can see that their average percent resolved level 1 capable is 22.8%. So this is an indication that when you do have a SPOC, single point of contact support model, your percent resolved level 1 capable is going to be lower, meaning that you will have fewer defects that are resolved by desktop support that could have and should have been resolved at level 1. Let's move on and talk now about the balanced scorecard. I mentioned a few moments ago that I was going to introduce this concept to you. And the scorecard is a very elegant tool for communicating the overall performance of a level 1 service desk. Let me explain how you construct this. We start by defining the most important metrics which are going to be included in the scorecard. We've included the 6 metrics that you can see here: cost per contact and customer satisfaction, which are the 2 foundation metrics, agent utilization and first contact resolution rate, agent job satisfaction, and average speed of answer. The next step is to put a weighting on each one of those metrics, and you can see that we have overweighted cost and customer satisfaction because these are the foundation metrics. Now this is subjective. These weightings have to add up to 100%, but we do overweight cost and customer satisfaction, and these weights in general represent our judgment as to the relative importance of each of these metrics. We then show some typical ranges for worst performance and best performance. Typically, these ranges come from a benchmarking peer group that is selected to be comparable to your service desk, and we show the worst case performance in the 3rd column from the right, the best case performance in the 4th column from the right, and then you would put your own performance in the 3rd column from the right. I'm sorry, I meant 3rd column from the left, 4th column from the left, and then you would put your own performance in the 3rd column from the right. Now to calculate a metric score for each of the 6 KPIs in the scorecard, you follow this formula. You look at worst case minus actual performance, so worst minus your actual performance, that becomes the numerator of the ratio. The denominator is worst case minus best case. And that will give you a number between 0 and 100%. The higher numbers are where you scored better. A high number, like on this average speed of answer, 73.5%, means that you are closer to the best end of this scenario than you are to the worst end of the spectrum. By contrast, the low number, as this service desk has on customer satisfaction, is an indication that they are closer to the worst end of the spectrum than they are to the best end of the spectrum. So the metric scores will range between 0 and 100% depending upon how you perform. The last step in this process is to multiply each metric score by the metric weighting to come up with a balanced score for each metric. And when you add those together, you come up with an overall aggregate score for your service desk. Now you might look at this and say, 55.6%, what does that mean? Well, the first time you do this, it doesn't really mean much of anything. However, when you compare it to other service desks that are comparable to yours, it does become very meaningful. In fact, when we run literally hundreds of service desks through this algorithm, the average score is right around 50%. Moreover, it's a bell-shaped curve centered right above 50%, with tails running off to the right above 70% and tails running off to the left below 30%. So typically, if you're between 50 and 60 or 62%, you're going to be in the 2nd quartile. If you're above 62%, you're likely to be in the 1st quartile. If you're between 38% and 50%, you're going to be in the 3rd quartile for overall performance. And if you're below 38%, typically you are in the 4th quartile. So what I'm showing on this chart is our service desk. Their balance score of 55.6% puts them in this position right here. It is a 2nd quartile performing service desk. And you can see that for this group, the average score is about 50%. Now, you can also use the balance scorecard to track and trend your performance over time. If you update the scorecard monthly or quarterly and then track your performance, If the number's going up, that's a good thing. It says that your overall performance is improving over time. If the number's going down, just the opposite is true. It means that your performance is declining over time. Now look at what we've done here. We've combined a disparate set of metrics with the units of dollars, percentages, and seconds. We've normalized them, we've rolled them together, and we've created a single overall metric for your service desk performance. No other metric tells the whole story. And the value of this metric is that when tracked over time, it gives you an indication of the direction that your performance is trending, whether it's trending on a positive trend upward or a negative trend downward. And for lay people in particular that do not understand service and support, when you start throwing statistics at them around cost per contact or customer satisfaction or speed of answer, oftentimes it's a blur to them, and they really just want to know, how's the service desk performing and how is it trending over time? And the balanced scorecard that I've introduced here, very simple concept, very easy to construct, is the best way to convey the overall performance of your service and support organization. Let's not forget as well that tracking and trending your performance is one of the key functions of KPIs. It's less important than the diagnostic function of KPIs. Nevertheless, when I go into a service desk to do an assessment or a benchmark, one of the first things I look for is whether or not they have posted their performance measurements in some obvious location on a bulletin board, for example, where everybody can see it. That's a very strong cultural indicator that shows that performance matters and that it's everybody's responsibility to drive a high level of performance in the service and support organization. Okay, we're going to shift gears now. We've talked about performance measurement, the fact that less is more. There's really only 7 KPIs plus a balanced scorecard that are needed to effectively track and trend, diagnose issues within the service and support organization, and ultimately take intelligent actions based upon those metrics. We're going to shift gears now and talk about the diagnostic piece. And in a word, this is all about benchmarking. Now, many of you I know have done benchmarking in the past. Some of you have done benchmarking with MetricNet, in fact. For those of you who are not familiar with benchmarking or have not had it defined for you before, let me just quickly define it before we get into a case study where we're going to address the remaining KPIs on our short list here. Benchmarking begins with comparison. That is, you compare your service desk to a peer group of other service desks. You compare on speed of answer, cost per contact, customer satisfaction, first contact resolution rate, agent job satisfaction, etc. The more important piece of benchmarking, though, is not the comparison, but rather the diagnosis that goes along with that. So when you identify service desks that are performing better than you, they have a better first contact resolution rate, for example, or a better first level resolution rate, for example, or a better customer satisfaction, it's important to understand how they achieve that better result. How do they achieve better performance than your organization did? Because if you understand what they're doing, you can emulate it. You can selectively adopt and adapt those practices into your own organization to build a sustainable competitive advantage. Now, given enough time, any service and support organization can achieve world-class performance. They can improve. The question is it going to take you months or years, or are you going to get it done fairly quickly? I would submit to you that benchmarking allows you to improve your performance not through trial and error, not through blood, sweat, and tears at an evolutionary pace, but rather at a revolutionary pace by building upon the industry's proven best practices. That's the real value of benchmarking, is that you can bypass all the trials and tribulations associated with incremental improvement, associated with trial and error improvement, and build upon the industry's proven best practices. Now, earlier I introduced this chart to define what I meant by world-class performance. And I'm using the same chart but for a different reason here. And the reason I'm showing the chart here is to explain what benchmarking does to an organization. Once again, we've got cost per contact on the x-axis, we've got customer satisfaction on the y-axis, and what benchmarking enables you to do is move in both dimensions in the right direction at the same time. In other words, it eliminates inefficiency from an organization so that you can both reduce your cost and improve your quality at the same time. Now that brings us to our second and third polling questions of the day, and those polling questions have to do with benchmarking. So the next polling question is this: have you benchmarked your service desk within the past year? Have you benchmarked your service desk within the past year? Again, just a shout out to those of you who've joined us on today's webcast. Channa Martin, great to see you here. Ego Wardu, glad to have you join us. Kim Wagner, great to see you on the webcast. Ron Daly, glad you could make it. Stephen Herman, great to have you on the webcast today. Todd West, glad you could join us. And Victor Aramos, glad to see you here. Okay, almost 90% of you have voted on this, so I'll give you another couple of seconds if you'd like to vote on this question. Have you benchmarked your service desk within the past year? So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll and then share the results with you. Okay, about a third of you have benchmarked your service desk within the past year. Another 53% of you have not, and then 14% are not applicable, presumably because you're not associated with a service and support organization. You might work for a consulting firm or something like that. There is a secondary question related to this that I would like to have you answer now, and the question is this: do you plan to benchmark your service desk in the future? And there are 5 possible responses here. Yes, within the next 90 days. Yes, within the next 6 months. Yes, within the next year. No plans to benchmark at this time, or not applicable. Okay, we're getting good response here. We've got about 70% of you having voted on this question, so give you another few seconds to weigh in on this before we close the poll down and show you the results of that. Okay, let me go ahead and close that poll and then share the results with you. Here's what we've got, and we've got several hundred people who participated in this poll. 11% are going to be benchmarking within the next 90 days. 16% are going to be benchmarking within the next 6 months, 26% within the next year, and 31% right now have no plans to benchmark at this time. Now, it's interesting to note that on the prior question, have you benchmarked within the last year, 33% said they had benchmarked within the past year. And on this question, 31% say they have no plans to benchmark at this time. So my guess is that there's probably a lot of overlap between those who have benchmarked within the past year and those that have no plans to benchmark at this time. For the rest of you, 11% that plan to benchmark within the next 90 days, another 16% planning to benchmark within the next 6 months, and 26% planning to benchmark within the next year. I do want to encourage you to follow through with those plans. One of the things that you'll find about benchmarking is that it is probably one of the single best investments that you can make in your service desk. It's relatively low cost, it is not terribly time consuming, and it's the single best approach to radically improving your performance and getting there at a revolutionary pace, getting there very, very quickly. So again, for those of you that are planning to benchmark within the next 90 days, 6 months, or 1 year, I would encourage you to follow up and follow through on those plans. Okay, let's move forward with our case study. We're going to be looking at the remaining KPIs. We've so far looked at first level resolution rate. We've also looked at the balanced scorecard. We're now going to take a look at cost per contact, customer satisfaction, agent utilization, FCR, first contact resolution rate, and agent job satisfaction. And the vehicle that we're going to use to discuss those KPIs is a benchmarking case study. Now on this page I've got some real benchmarking data, but I want to caution you against comparing your own data to what you see on this page. And the reason I want to caution you is because every service desk is different and unique. And when you do compare your service desk to others, you need to make sure that the comparison is valid, the so-called apples to apples rule in benchmarking, which means that you have to have comparability in scope, scale, complexity, and geography, meaning that you want to compare to other service desks that have a similar scope of service, a similar volume of contacts because service desks are scale sensitive, a similar complexity as measured by handle time, and then a similar geography because these are labor-intensive functions. And if you're in a low-wage part of the world, for example, in India or the Philippines, your cost per contact will be much lower than it would be if you were, say, in Canada or the United States. So it's important to have comparability in scope and scale, complexity, and geography when doing a benchmarking comparison. So with that disclaimer stated, let's take a look at this data. The first thing I do when I'm conducting an assessment or a benchmark is I go to cost per contact, which is the primary efficiency metric, one of the foundation metrics. This service desk is spending $28.17. The peer group, there are about 40 companies that we compared them to, on average is spending about $23. Okay, that's our first red flag. Costs are high, $28.17 versus $23. The second metric I look at is customer satisfaction. This is the second foundation metric. their customer sat, the percentage of customers that are either satisfied or very satisfied is 63%, and the peer group is at 79%. So we've got two strikes against us, high cost, low quality, and we need to figure out what's going on. And so we're going to go through this case study talking about the underlying drivers of customer satisfaction and cost per contact, and we're going to define the metrics as we go through this process, starting with the foundation metrics. We talked briefly about cost per contact and customer satisfaction. Think about them on a two-dimensional chart where we've got cost on the x-axis, we've got quality as measured by customer satisfaction on the y-axis. If you're in this upper right-hand quadrant, this is where you are both efficient, low cost, and effective, high quality. This is really the holy grail of being a service and support organization. If you have both low cost and high customer satisfaction, you're really hitting the nail on the head. Furthermore, you want to be, if you're truly optimized, you're going to be on this outer arc that I've shown here. The service desks that are way down here are extremely efficient, very, very low cost, yet they still achieve a level of customer satisfaction that is above the industry average level, which is this horizontal line going through here. Service desks that are up on this part of the arc are very, very high quality, yet their costs are below the industry average level. The industry average is this vertical line going through here. So ultimately, this outer arc is where you want to be. You can be extremely low cost and still achieve a reasonable level of customer satisfaction, or you can be extremely high quality, yet still achieve costs that are below the industry average level, or somewhere in between those two extremes. But to be optimized, as I mentioned earlier, means that there's really no inefficiency left in the system. That is, you cannot improve quality without seeing an increase in cost. Likewise, you cannot reduce your cost without seeing a reduction in quality. And that's what it means to be optimized. There's nothing left to squeeze out of the system. Now, for those service desks that end up in this lower right-hand quadrant, you have low costs, but you also have low quality. And over time, you want to be moving up so that you can improve your quality. For those that are in the upper left quadrant, your quality is good, but your costs are also high, and over time you want to be reducing your costs so that you can have both low cost and high quality. For those that are in this lower left quadrant, that's the worst of everything. That's where you are both high cost and low quality, and in this case you want to be moving in both dimensions to reduce your cost over time and improve the quality of your services over time. Now, what about the underlying drivers of cost and customer satisfaction? They are respectively agent utilization and first contact resolution rate. How do we know? Well, we look at the data. This data shows agent utilization on the x-axis versus cost per contact on the y-axis. The blue diamonds are data points, and the red line is the linear regression through that data. Now, this is fairly intuitive and fairly obvious, I think. You would expect in a labor-intensive function that if utilization goes up, your costs go down. The slope here is about 1 to 2, meaning that you get a 1 percentage point drop in cost per contact for every 2 percentage point increase in agent utilization. The reason for that is that agent salaries and benefits make up about 50% of the total cost of a service desk. So it takes a 2 percentage point reduction, or increase, I should say, in agent utilization to get a 1% reduction in cost per contact. Now, if you look at all human resources at the level 1 service desk, you look at the agents, the trainers, the supervisors, the team leads, the workforce schedulers, the QA, QC people, et cetera. If you look at all personnel, salaries and benefits, it makes up about 67, or about 2/3 to 70% of the total cost. But agents, on average, make up about 50% of the total cost of a service and support organization, so it does take a 2 percentage point increase in utilization to yield a 1 percentage point decrease in cost per contact. Now, what about how we define utilization? Essentially, we look at PI time, which is shorthand for phone in ear time. This would apply to emails as well. You understand, that email work time doesn't involve time on the phones, but essentially what we look at is inbound contacts handled by an agent in a month multiplied by the average inbound handle time. We add to that the average number of outbound contacts handled by an agent in a month multiplied by the average outbound handle time, and we multiply that by the average number of working minutes in a month, which is about 9,800 working minutes per month. So if we put some numbers on this example, for example, 375 inbound contacts, 225 outbound contacts, 10-minute inbound handle time, 5-minute outbound handle time, and we run the math on this, we get a utilization of about 50%, which is about the industry average. And a lot of people are shocked when they hear that agents are only about 50% utilized. But the reality is that's the number when we look across a wide geography. In fact, worldwide, the average agent utilization is only about 50%. Now, keep in mind, we don't back out things like vacation days, sick days, training time, administrative time, PTO. We don't back any of that stuff out. So this doesn't mean that the agents are goofing off, or, half the time, or aren't doing their job half the time. It simply means that they're in pure customer service mode or customer-facing mode about 50% of the time that, out of a 2,080-hour work year. So 50%, but it ranges from a low of 25% to a high of about 75%. Now, if we look at first contact resolution rate, once again, we've plotted these. Blue diamonds are data points, and the red line is the linear regression. We've got first contact resolution rate on the x-axis, customer satisfaction on the y-axis. And here the slope is closer to 1-to-1, meaning that every 1 percentage point increase in first contact resolution rate yields about a 1 percentage point increase in customer satisfaction. So when we talk about FCR driving customer satisfaction, this is not just hearsay. It's not a guess. It's not a theory. The data proves it. And we can see this in organizations worldwide. So when we're doing an assessment or a benchmark for a company and we find that their customer satisfaction is not where it needs to be, the first place we look is first contact resolution rate, because typically that is the culprit. Now, there are other drivers of customer satisfaction, which I'll get to momentarily, but this is the big one, your first contact resolution rate. Now, for the indirect or the non-live channels like email, there's no consensus definition yet on what FCR means in the email channel, but the de facto definition, what the industry seems to be converging upon, is a 1-hour resolution time, meaning that if an email comes in and it gets resolved within an hour, that's considered first contact resolution rate. Now, that's somewhat arbitrary, but there's an important point tied up in that, which is that you need to be working your email channels in parallel with your voice channel, because if the end users get the sense that email is being neglected and only gets checked once a day or once every 2 hours or 4 hours, for example, they're not going to use it. They're going to call in. And that's not good, because you want to balance your channels the best you can. If you get a good mix of email and live voice and chat, assuming you've got the chat channel, web tickets, etc., that balance helps with workforce scheduling. And the more you are able to split up your inbound contact through those various channels, the more evenly you can oftentimes balance the channels and ultimately get better utilization out of the agents that are working on your service desk. Let's move on now and look at how service levels impact agent utilization. As you might expect, more aggressive service levels, that is a quicker speed of answer and a lower abandonment rate, tend to drive down your agent utilization because you typically have to staff up. So naturally, as speed of answer goes down, we've got speed of answer on the x-axis here, we've got cost per contact on the y-axis. As the speed of answer goes down, the cost goes up. If you've been in workforce scheduling, you know why this is the case, because you have to staff up to answer the phones more quickly. The same thing is true of abandonment rate. As the abandonment rate goes down, the cost per contact goes up. Now, there's a mythology in this industry that low abandonment rate and low speed of answer make for happy customers. That is, drive high levels of customer satisfaction. But the data suggests otherwise. If we look at page 49, this shows ASA versus customer satisfaction, and page 50 shows call abandonment rate versus customer satisfaction. Let's drill down into these a little bit, starting with the ASA versus customer satisfaction. The x-axis here is not ASA in seconds. Instead, it is ASA, average speed of answer, as a % of the total handle time. So if you've got a 10-minute handle time, 10% of that is going to be 1 minute. If you have a 5-minute handle time, 10% of that is going to be 30 seconds. And what this chart says is that as long as your ASA is less than 10% of your handle time, you don't gain any benefit in terms of customer satisfaction. In other words, customer satisfaction is flat in this range. However, if your ASA gets significantly above 10% of handle time, you will see a drop-off in customer satisfaction. The same thing is true of call abandonment rate. You can see that if your call abandonment rate is in the 7-8% range, that's optimal, because if it gets much higher than that, you start to see a drop-off in customer satisfaction. But if it's lower than that, you don't gain anything in terms of customer satisfaction. So the implication is that there is a sweet spot here for both speed of answer and call abandonment rate. That sweet spot is somewhere in the range of 6 to 8% speed of answer as a percentage of handle time, and for call abandonment rate, likewise, somewhere in the range of 6 to 8%. The implication is that if you go much lower than that, all you're doing is driving up your costs, but not improving your customer satisfaction at all. But if you go much higher than that, much higher than 10% of ASA as a percentage of handle time, much higher than 10% abandonment rate, you will see a drop-off in your customer satisfaction. So keep in mind that there is an optimal set of service levels. Target abandonment rate, I would say, right around 6 or 7%. Target speed of answer, right around 8% of your average handle time. This is another way of saying that customers are smart enough to realize that in the overall scheme of things, if your handle time is 10 or 15 or 20 minutes, they recognize that the speed of answer is pretty insignificant. So they're willing to forgive you an occasional long speed of answer or an occasional abandoned call. What they're not willing to forgive is incompetence as measured by first contact resolution rate. So they're smart enough to realize that if I have to wait a little bit longer, that's okay. Most customers have speakerphones now, so they can wait and they can work on their computer, assuming it's not broken, while they're waiting for you to pick up the call. But they're not very forgiving of a low first contact resolution rate. So the emphasis needs to be on competency, training, and tools that drive that competency, that drive that first contact resolution rate, as opposed to quick service levels, which only drive up your costs and don't do anything for customer satisfaction. Okay, let's move on now and look at what training hours do for an organization, specifically what they do for FCR, first contact resolution rate. As the new agent training hours increase, that's what we've got on the x-axis, you can see that first contact resolution rate goes up. And as annual agent training hours, that is, you've got seasoned agents, how much training do they get on an annual basis? All these blue diamonds on the y-axis here are organizations that don't provide any training for their agents beyond the initial training. Here again, you can see that as the annual training hours increase, so too does FCR. So training is not just motherhood and apple pie. I know oftentimes it seems that way, but quality training that is directed towards improving first contact resolution rate and first level resolution rate does have a positive impact on an organization. It does drive higher levels of customer satisfaction by driving higher first contact resolution rates. So let's do our build here. We've talked about the foundation metrics of cost and quality, driven respectively by agent utilization and first contact resolution rate, driven by a tertiary set of metrics that I've shown here. Agent satisfaction is a level down below that, and then agent satisfaction is driven by coaching, career pathing, and training hours. Now this is a very important chart because it shows the cause and effect relationship of the most important KPIs in the service desk. The ones in red are the ones on our short list: cost per contact, agent utilization, customer satisfaction, first contact resolution rate, FLR, first level resolution rate, and agent job satisfaction. The one we're not showing on here is the aggregate metric, the balanced scorecard. But this shows you how they are interconnected. And there's a lot of power in this diagram because it shows you which levers you can pull to achieve desired outcomes. If you want to improve customer sat, look first at first contact resolution rate. Look secondarily at agent job satisfaction. If you're trying to reduce your cost per contact, look first at agent utilization, and as a second order driver, look at your service levels. But we went through all of this so that we could diagnose what was going on with this company whose costs are high and whose customer satisfaction is low. Now remember, the big driver of cost is utilization. So let's see what their agent utilization is. 47% versus the peer group at 53%. What are the big drivers of utilization? Well, one of them is your service level. So let's look at that. Speed of answer, 18 seconds. Call abandonment rate, 2.9%, compared to the peer group at 45 seconds and 8.1%. Now, when I asked this company, why do you have an 18-second ASA and a 2.9% abandonment rate, the answer was this. The CIO told us to keep the ASA under 20 seconds and the abandonment rate under 3%. There was no other reason than that. Now, that's a classic case of misguided diagnosis or a bad assumption, the assumption being that if we have good service levels, the customers will be happy. But I've just shown you the data that says just the opposite. Service levels don't matter. What matters is first contact resolution rate. So let's look at that metric. 51.3% compared to 71.6%. 51.2%. So clearly their FCR is one of the underlying causes of their low customer satisfaction. But let's further diagnose what's going on here with cost per contact. We've determined that their utilization is low because their service levels are too aggressive. The prescription here, remember the third part of our model, which we'll get to momentarily, prescription was just back off on these service levels. You don't need 18 seconds. You can probably get by fine with 45 seconds or even a minute. And back away from these aggressive abandonment rates. You probably find at 6 or 7% call abandonment rate. Now, their turnover was about 30% per year. This is a high turnover business. In fact, worldwide, the average turnover on a service desk is about 40% per year. So the good news, if you will, silver lining in this turnover is that they could downsize through attrition. That is, as they lose agents, don't replace them, and get your utilization up to 53 or 54%, and you will see your costs fall into line. And that's exactly what they did. It took them about 3 months, 90 days. They attrited 7 or 8 FTEs. That increased their utilization to about 55%, and it dropped their cost per contact to around $21.50. And it only took them, it was about a month. It was less than 2 months. It was somewhere in the range of 30 to 60 days. So it was a very quick resolution. Now, the second metric that we were concerned about is customer satisfaction. We know that customer sat is primarily driven by first contact resolution rate. We know this organization only has a 51.3% resolution rate versus 71.2% first contact resolution rate. We also know that training hours are a big driver of FCR. We showed that on the diagrams on some of the prior pages here. So if we look at their training hours, new agents get 36 hours of training versus 79 hours for the benchmarking peer group. Annually, their agents get 12 hours of training versus 34 hours of training for the benchmarking peer group. So here again, the diagnosis was pretty straightforward. It was very simple. We simply said, look, you need to provide more training both initially and on an ongoing basis. And specifically, you ought to have training modules on the importance of first contact resolution rate and how you can use various tools such as knowledge management or remote diagnostic tools in order to maximize the first contact resolution rate. So a fairly straightforward prescription, and here again, within a relatively short period of time, a little bit longer than it took them to get their costs in line, but within approximately 3 months, they had improved their customer satisfaction to about 80% by upping their FCR, their first contact resolution rate, to 75%. So once you understand how the key performance indicators impact each other, how they are connected to each other, how they're interconnected to each other, doing the diagnosis becomes fairly straightforward. Now I'm going to pause and do a real short Q&A here. Keep in mind I'll be doing a more extensive Q&A at the conclusion of today's webcast, but I would like to answer a few questions right now and then we'll move on. I want to make sure that I finish by 3:30 Eastern Time. Okay, from Mohammed. Question says, I would like to know if the material will be available for attendees after the webinar. The answer is yes. All you have to do is complete the survey that will pop up when you exit the GoToWebinar. Just answer that and we'll send you a link that, where you can download today's presentation. From James, how is your cost per contact calculated? Is it fully burdened or agent cost per call or something different? It's fully burdened, James. It includes agent salaries and benefits plus the salaries and benefits for the supervisors, the team leads, the workforce schedulers, the trainers, the QA/QC people. It also includes the travel, the training, the office supplies, the telecommunications, and the occupancy expense, meaning the facilities cost. So it is a fully loaded cost divided by all inbound contacts regardless of which channel. It could be live voice, they could be walk-in, they could be fax-in, they could be chats, they could be emails. So all costs divided by all inbound contact volume. Okay, from Cynthia, does MetricNet have a white paper that shows the industry standard metrics for abandonment rate, handle time, ASA? There are no real standards, Cynthia, on that. We get asked that question pretty much every day. What's the standard handle time? What's the standard ASA? What's the standard abandonment rate? I've tried to communicate on abandonment rate and ASA that there are some reasonable ranges for ASA. If you're in the range of, say 6 to 10% of your handle time, that's a good number. For abandonment rate, if you're in the range of 6 to 8%, that's a good number. For handle time, that will vary dramatically depending upon what support you're providing. If you're a service desk that does pure password reset, which some service desks do, your handle time should be in the range of 2 to 2.5 minutes. By contrast, we have clients that do complex support for SAP applications, Oracle applications, proprietary business applications where sometimes the handle time can be 30 minutes, 45 minutes, even an hour or more. So the handle time, that's never going to be standard. It really depends on the complexity of the support that you're providing. As far as the service levels go, I've given you some guidance on that. And if you go to our website, there are white papers there that talk about what some of the industry averages are, but there are very few standards in this industry in terms of what your handle time should be, your ASA, your abandonment rate should be. They just don't exist. Okay, from Diana. What is the recommended way to measure quality of a customer experience? Customer satisfaction, what's the best metric? It's sometimes hard to quantify this. Diana, there's call quality, there's net promoter score, there's customer satisfaction. There's a lot of different proxies for quality. I believe that the best number is customer satisfaction, although an increasing number of our clients are measuring net promoter score, and most service desks also measure call quality. Now, call quality is used as a coaching tool to try and improve the quality of service that the agents are delivering. It primarily helps them with their soft skills, but it also identifies areas where they can improve their technical ability as well. Customer satisfaction, however, is the single best measure of quality because that's the customer telling you what they think about the quality of service that you're delivering. Now, there's a lot. I mean, the long answer to your question would take me a couple hours, and clearly I don't have time for that here. But if you want to email me or call me, I can walk you through what the best practices are around how you survey the customers, how many questions there should be, what the questions should look like, how to avoid survey bias in the customer satisfaction survey. But that is the most important way to measure quality is customer satisfaction. And one of the questions you should include in your survey always is a question about first contact resolution rate, because ultimately it's the customer that decides if you resolved on first contact. It's not the agent that decides. If the customer says you resolved on first contact, you did. If they say otherwise, you didn't, regardless of whether or not you think you did. Okay, one more question, and then we're going to move on in our presentation. Let's see. From Matt, your best practice numbers have been invaluable. Thanks, Matt. From Rude, is it me or is your microphone muted sometimes? My microphone's not muted, so I apologize for the difficulty with the sound. Okay, from Gilbert, I want to make sure I have the cost per event correct. For service desk, it's $22 per ticket. You say event, I say ticket. And for desk side, it's 26. No, for desk side, it's 62, and it's per ticket, not per event. And that will be in the presentation, Gil. If you want to fill out the questionnaire at the conclusion of the webcast, you'll get a copy of it, and it will show you all of those costs. Okay, we've got about 10 more questions queued up, but I want to move on and make sure, as I mentioned, that I finish on time here. So let's move to the next section of our best practices model. This has to do with action planning, or specifically prescription. And there are 4 charts that I want to show you here, starting with performance measurement, going to human resources, ticket handling, and technology. Now, you've probably heard the paradigm people, process, technology. The idea being that you invest in your people first, then you invest in your processes, then you invest in your technology. And in general, I would agree with that. But I would even put one sort of foundation stone beneath the people, and that is performance measurement. Because without an effective performance measurement and management discipline, you really can't do much in service and support. You're going to be flailing. You're not going to know where you can improve your performance or how you can improve your performance. And so you could have the best people, the best processes, and the best technology in the world, but without a strong performance measurement and management discipline, there's no way that you can continuously improve in those other 3 areas. So we believe that performance measurement comes even before people, process, and technology. But then you make your investments in people, i.e. training and development, and then in process, you build your process around your people. The process should be driven by the people, and then the technology is meant to automate processes and to create efficiencies in service and support. Now, in this industry, if you pick up any of the trade periodicals, there's literally a technology advertisement on every other page, and that leads a lot of people to believe that technology must be the most important success factor in service and support. But we have actually found, surprisingly enough, that there is a reverse correlation between technology investment and the quality of service and support. Now, that's not because technology is inherently bad, but it is because many organizations overinvest in technology thinking that that will give them a great service and support organization, whereas those that don't have quite that level of resources, they may be getting by with rudimentary technology tools, tend to focus more on people and process. So it's an interesting phenomenon that we've been able to identify in this industry. Again, we're not anti-technology. We don't think it's bad, but we do believe that it has to come after investments in people and process. Now let me explain how these charts work. And by way of example, I'll use the chart on human resources. And again, there's 4 of them here, starting with performance measurement and then going through people, process, and technology. What we've listed here are some of the best practices around human resource management. It is not an all-inclusive list, but these are some of the more important best practices around human resource management, including recruiting and training and career pathing and retention. Now, we've described the best practice in a little bit more detail in this second column from the left. And then on the right-hand side, you see a series of cells where we've got some affected KPIs listed on top, and we've got these cells at the intersection of these affected KPIs and these best practices. And those cells will be colored either white or light blue or dark blue. Now when a cell is white, it means that there is little or no cause-effect relationship between the affected KPI and the best practice. If there's a light blue cell, it means that there is a weak cause and effect relationship between the affected KPI and the best practice. And when there's a dark blue cell, it means that there is a strong cause and effect relationship between the affected KPI and the industry best practices. Now the other charts are constructed in a very similar fashion, but here's how you would interpret this. If you go and do a benchmark and you find that your first contact resolution rate is not good, if we look at this dark blue cell, it says that you can probably remediate at least part of that with better training. We saw that in the case study we just went through. But also putting in place a performance standard. The mere act of creating a performance standard around first call resolution or first contact resolution rate has the effect of improving that metric. So you can look at any KPI where you have a performance gap based on a benchmark that you may have conducted. Look at the intersection of that KPI with these industry best practices, and this will give you insight into which best practices might be applied to close a negative performance gap. So it's a little bit of a set of cheat sheets, starting with performance measurement, going to human resources, ticket handling processes and procedures, and technology. This helps you understand how these different best practices will help you improve these affected key performance indicators. And then moving on to pages 62 through 67, we've got a tool that we use here at MetricNet. Let's pick one here. Let's say first contact resolution rate. That's our KPI. Our performance target might be 80%. We know that some of the key drivers of first contact resolution rate are new agent training hours and veteran agent training hours. Call quality is another indicator of FCR. And then having knowledge management and a remote diagnostic tool, something like BombGuard, for example, is critical to helping to drive that first contact resolution rate. So you would put a performance target here, and then you look at the prescription, the best practice prescription that will help you close any performance gap. I just talked about a few of these, establishing an FCR goal, for example, providing additional agent training, establishing FCR as an important objective. So this is a very simple tool, but it does help sort of solidify the thinking around how you might close a performance gap related to customer satisfaction or related to agent utilization or first contact resolution rate or agent job satisfaction. So little tools like this, little tricks like this can greatly facilitate the development of action plans to close negative performance gaps and improve performance over time. So let's move on to the last section of our best practices model. This is about implementing the actions that you identify in the prior phase. So we've talked about performance measurement, less is more, diagnosis, benchmark at least once a year, prescription, fairly straightforward once you understand the cause and effect relationship between the KPIs and the industry best practices. And now this is where the rubber meets the road. We want to implement to see some real benefit from our performance measurement. Now what I'm showing here is a simplified diagram, page 68, of an organization that set out to, and they were not performing well. In fact, it was one of the worst service desks we had ever benchmarked. They were not only in the bottom quartile, they were in the bottom decile, that is the lower 10% of all service desks that we had ever benchmarked. And they were very ambitious and very committed to achieving world-class performance. And they put together an action plan. And again, I've simplified it here, perhaps overly simplified it. But there were 8 key components to their action plan. And they began in February 2 years ago, started with documenting their call handling procedures and processes. They standardized that. They put in place a balanced scorecard. Notice that they staggered these. They didn't want to bite off too much at one time. They put in place a balanced scorecard in the month of March. They started surveying their customers, which they had not been doing in the month of May. Then they documented an agent career path, which is a significant driver of agent job satisfaction, which, as you know, is a significant driver of customer satisfaction. They then put in place a root cause analysis program. They defined agent performance standards. They rewrote their IVR menus, and then they implemented a witness call monitoring system. And within 12 months, actually more like 10 months, they actually had become a top quartile performing service and support organization. They were not in the top 10%, but to have gone from the bottom decile to the top quartile was a fairly significant accomplishment. Relatively straightforward. They followed what I've outlined here, small number of KPIs, benchmark your performance, develop an action plan, execute the action plan, and that's what they did here. Let's keep in mind that KPIs are also used to establish performance goals, and we typically make a distinction between goals that are established for the service desk versus goals that are established for individual agents. Now think about it this way. The service desk is not a living, breathing entity. The service desk can't be held accountable for anything because it's not a living being. However, you can push performance targets down to an individual agent level. They can be held accountable. And so what we're showing here is that when you establish service goals for the service desk, you need to push commensurate goals down to the agent level and hold those agents accountable for that level of performance. Otherwise, you're not going to get that performance at the service desk level. Now, one of the tools that I introduced earlier was the balanced scorecard. That scorecard, increasingly, we find in the industry, is being repurposed for individual agents. The scorecard will be updated on typically a monthly basis. Sometimes it's done weekly, sometimes it's done quarterly, but most often it is updated on a monthly basis. Now mechanically, this agent scorecard works exactly like the service desk scorecard does. You'll see over here that we've got 7 metrics. We've got a productivity metric, the inbound contacts handled. We've got a quality metric, customer satisfaction. We've got agent utilization, which is another productivity metric. We've got first contact res rate. And then we've got some subjective metrics like teamwork and initiative and mentoring. Now, even those subjective metrics can be quantified. Just put it on a scale of 1 to 5. 5 says you're doing a great job. 1 says you're not doing it at all. So we are, with this scorecard, objectifying what is otherwise a very subjective process. You've probably been, most of you on this call have probably been both on the receiving end and on the delivering end of feedback for an employee. And you know that historically it's been very subjective. Yeah, you're doing a pretty good job. I think you could probably offer a little bit more leadership, take more initiative, whatever it might be. But it's very subjective and oftentimes very fuzzy. And I think it leaves both sides, both the person delivering the feedback as well as the person receiving the feedback, it oftentimes leaves them feeling a little bit shortchanged. Now, the agent scorecard is a way of objectifying that process. And if you've not had this in your organization before, I can tell you that when you try and implement it, there will be pushback. But universally, for those clients of ours, which is about a third of them now who have implemented this, said that within about 90 to 120 days, not only had everybody accepted this feedback mechanism, but they had embraced it. And everybody liked it because it was delivering objective feedback. So when you sit down and you deliver the feedback on a monthly basis, for example, there's no misunderstanding about why an individual agent may have gotten a low score on their productivity metric or their teamwork metric or their utilization metric, because you've actually scored them here and you've given them an overall score that shows how they compare to other service desk agents that are working in that organization. So this is a tool that is increasingly being adopted in the industry for the purposes of delivering quality, frequent, actionable feedback to level 1 agents and tier 2 agents within level 1. So you can very quickly go down the list here and see that this agent isn't doing a very good job on quality because their customer sat scores are low, but they're doing great on teamwork, they're doing great on mentoring, they're doing pretty well on first contact resolution rate, but for whatever reason, they're not achieving a very good score on customer satisfaction. So there's some valuable feedback right there. You pinpointed an area where they need to improve their performance. That is customer satisfaction. It's some combination of soft skills. Most likely it's soft skills because you can see that their FCR is pretty good. They got 69 points on FCR, but only 39 points on customer satisfaction. So that's probably an indication that their soft skills are not as good as they could or should be, and that they need to work a little bit more on those. Now, the follow-on to this is that by posting the scores in a location where everybody can see them, on an intranet or on a bulletin board or something, each person that works in service and support can see how they stack up relative to the other person. Now, you'll note that we assign numbers here. We don't want to embarrass anybody, so we're not going to put the names here. But it is important, I think, for individual agents to understand how they are performing relative to others in the service desk, and that they have the kind of feedback that enables them to improve their performance over time. So it's objective feedback and it's actionable feedback. The other effect this has is that those that really aren't cut out for service and support, and all of you have met people like that before, it's just not their calling. They may not like it, they may not be good at it, and if they're consistently scoring low on the balanced scorecard, it really forces them to examine themselves and say, well, maybe this isn't the profession that I should be in. Maybe this isn't the job for me. And what we find is that there's positive self-attrition as a result of that. And I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but the reality is if people are in the wrong position and they're really not cut out for this kind of work, it's better for them, it's better for the service desk if they do move on and find something that they are more suited for. And this actually facilitates that kind of positive turnover. So the service desk scorecard can be repurposed. It can be used not only for giving you an overall score for your service desk, but it can also be used for developing individual scores for the agents that work in service and support. So let me kind of summarize what we've done here today and give you some advice on what you can do moving forward to gain some immediate benefit from today's insights. The first thing I want to show you is this comic that was sent to me by a client more than a dozen years ago, and it's as relevant, if not more so today than it was back then. The comic reads, "Delight customers, why can't we just satisfy them like we used to?" Well, as I pointed out very early in this presentation, customer satisfaction is a losing proposition. Satisfied customers are not loyal customers. They are not customers that necessarily want to do business with you, and they are not customers that are going to propagate positive word-of-mouth referrals. You need enthusiastic customers. You need delighted customers, because that is an indication that they genuinely believe in what you're doing and they are willingly going to you for service and support. The more important reason that you need to keep your customers delighted is this. This data is from a couple of years ago. We did a survey of more than 1,000 large companies worldwide, and we surveyed their end users. We gave them a multiple choice survey, and we asked them what it was that drove their opinions of IT. We didn't ask them about service and support. We said, what drives your opinion of corporate IT? It was a multiple choice question. We gave them a lot of choices, and we told them that they could pick their top 3, which is why when you add up these percentages, it adds to more than 100%. But the stunning conclusion, the profound conclusion was this. 84% of those surveyed said that the service desk was a key driver of their opinion about corporate IT. The second most common response, desktop support, 47%. The implication is this. You're the gateway. Those who work in service and support are the gateway to IT for the vast majority of end users that work for an organization. And the quality of the experience that they have has far-reaching implications for how they feel about all of corporate IT. You see, they don't see behind service and support. They have frequent interactions with the service desk and with desktop support, and that's how they formulate their opinions about all of IT, because they don't have interactions with other parts of IT. They don't typically hang out in the data center or the NOC or with an application development group, but they do have frequent interactions with service and support. So even though service and support represents, on average, less than 5% of total IT spending, it has a disproportionate influence on what end users think about all of IT. Now, if I'm a CIO or a Chief Technology Officer and I see this chart, I know exactly what I need to do. I'm going to invest not only the dollars and the headcount, the technology and service and support to make sure that everybody has a high-quality experience there. I'm personally going to spend some time down there talking to people who work in service and support to make sure that they have the resources that they need, the dollars, the technology, the training, the headcount, whatever it is. I'm going to make sure they get it. Because if they look good, all of IT looks good. And if all of IT looks good, I, Ms. or Mr. CIO or Chief Technology Officer, am going to look good. So service and support is a proxy, not just for all of IT, but for CIO effectiveness. In fact, I wrote an article about this for CIO Magazine a few years back. Service and support is a proxy for CIO effectiveness, and it truly is. And most CIOs, or some CIOs I should say, are starting to wake up to this fact, and they are starting to make the appropriate level of investments in service and support to ensure that end users truly do have a positive experience. Because when they do, they think good things about all of IT. When that happens, they think good things about the leadership in IT. So even though service and support represents less than 5% of total IT spending, it has a disproportionate influence on what end users think about all of information technology. So there's a high leverage opportunity here for many organizations. Let's quickly summarize what we've learned in our four-part model, starting with performance measurement, going to diagnosis, prescription, and implementation. So when it comes to KPIs, remember that less is more. You really only need 7 metrics, and I've defined those for you. But you should also have an aggregate metric, the balance scorecard, and you need to track your performance on an ongoing basis. You should also benchmark your performance once a year. In fact, there's a one-to-one correlation between service desks that benchmark and service desks that are world-class. Now, some service desks are great because they benchmark, and some are benchmarking to become great. In other words, they got great by benchmarking. So there's a little bit of a chicken or an egg argument there. Are they great because they benchmark, or do they benchmark because they're great? There's some of both there. The point is that benchmarking really is an indicator of success in service and support, and those organizations that do benchmark once a year are almost universally the best in our benchmarking database. They're the ones that perform the best. You need to select an appropriate benchmarking peer group. Remember the caveat I mentioned very early on in the case study, which is you've got to compare yourself to service desks that have comparable scope, scale, complexity, and geography. You can use the KPIs we've defined in this presentation to identify performance gaps, and then use that cause and effect diagram, the connection diagram that showed how the KPIs are interconnected. Use that to determine the underlying drivers of any performance gaps. Then develop your action plan based on the gap analysis and the best practices. You don't have to hit the ball out of the park. You can identify the low-hanging fruit, and it should be a relatively short list. You don't want a long laundry list. Do what's realistic in the near term. Get a few wins under your belt. But the acid test on your action plan is this. Every action should produce either lower costs or higher customer satisfaction, or both. Those are the foundation metrics. Remember, cost, customer satisfaction. If it doesn't have one or both of those effects, if your action plan, if any item in your action plan does not either reduce your cost or improve the quality of the customer experience, it isn't worth doing. It's as simple as that. And finally, implement your action plan. You start by building buy-in up front so that the change sticks, that people really believe in it. Assign accountability and ownership. Put performance goals in place. Monitor your progress over time. But you should expect and demand positive and measurable results. The bottom line on key performance indicators is that it should be viewed and treated as a holistic discipline. Now, successful measurement goes well beyond tracking and trending to produce actionable insight. The near-term goal should be improved performance. The ultimate goal should be world-class performance, which I defined on about page 3 of this presentation. Effective performance measurement and management is perhaps the single most important success factor in becoming world-class. That's why I put it at the bottom of that hierarchical pyramid ahead of people, process, and technology. So performance measurement first, then people management or human resource management, processes, and technology. The key to getting results is to take action. The old Nike ad from the 1990s, just do it, really applies when it comes to implementing your action plan, because once you've defined your measures, benchmarked, come up with an action plan, you have no choice but to implement that action plan. Now I want to suggest a number of things that you can do here over the next couple of months, say 60 to 90 days, to gain some benefit from what you've seen here today. Now I'll get to the questions in a moment. We've got quite a few questions that are queued up, but before I do so, I do want to make a few closing remarks. The first thing is I want to encourage all of you to take a look around our new website at MetricNet.com. One of our unique features, as I mentioned, is that we offer a free membership that gives you unlimited access to all of our content. I would also suggest that you connect with us on social media, where we put out a pretty steady stream of information that IT service and support professionals may find useful. In the copy of the presentation itself, we provided links to all of our social media pages and groups. Don't forget to register for upcoming webcasts. These are always free of charge. We've got them scheduled out through June of this year. Next month, we're going to be looking at best practices in desktop support. In April, we're going to look at desktop support KPIs. In May, call center best practices, and in June, call center key performance indicators. Please also feel free to browse our resource library on MetricNet's website, where you'll find a number of white papers, presentations, and magazine articles on call center benchmarking and industry best practices. And for those who are interested in benchmarking, there are at least 3 ways that you can complete a benchmark with MetricNet. First, we have our peer group benchmarks that compare your service desk or desktop support organization to that of a unique peer group. These are our custom benchmarks, and they're very comprehensive in scope. Secondly, if you're only interested in industry benchmarking data, you can download an industry benchmarking report directly from our website. Just go to MetricNet.com, click the Shop button, and you'll see our industry benchmarks that are available for download. And finally, for those do-it-yourselfers, you can purchase a benchmarking data file in Excel format and conduct your own benchmarking analysis. Don't forget to look us up if you are planning to attend the HDI conference in Orlando in April. MetricNet will be delivering 2 presentations on metrics and benchmarking. The first presentation is on desktop support metrics, while the second presentation addresses metrics that are unique and specific to the ROI of support. Also, if you're interested in scheduling a meeting with MetricNet at the conference, you can do so directly on our website. Just go to the URL that's shown here, metricnet.com/HDI-2014, and you'll see a tab that pulls up a calendar where you can reserve a meeting time with MetricNet. Now, you can reach MetricNet in the United States at this phone number, 703-992-7559. You can also reach us through our website at www.metricnet.com, or you can send us an email at info@metricnet.com. Now, for those who have time to stay on for a few more minutes, I'll be answering any questions that you typed in during the webcast. And for those who have to exit the webcast at this time, I just want to thank you for attending the session. I hope you found it to be informative and insightful. Now, please remember to complete the brief survey that pops up when you exit the webcast. This is a requirement if you wish to receive a copy of today's presentation. So thank you once again. Let me take a look at the questions that we've got here. Okay. A question from Matt. We've quantified all performance metrics and have scores for the key 6 metrics. We're currently performing a root cause analysis. We've used your material and are profiling the managers and employees of the service desk, or polling, sorry. This is great. However, we are finding it difficult to find commonly prescribed solutions, process, people, technology, for the top 6 metrics. And they're typically associated root causes. Any advice? That question was typed in at 2:38, which was almost an hour ago. And I think, hopefully, Matt, I answered that question for you when I went through those cause-effect diagrams back here when we were, these charts here. These are sort of cheat sheets, if you will, for if you identify a gap in customer satisfaction or first contact resolution rate or even first level resolution rate, how do you close those gaps? Where do you focus your time and attention? What technologies, what human resource practices, what processes and procedures can you implement that will enable you to close those gaps? So the answer to your question is, fairly lengthy and complex, but there's at least a reasonable summary answer on those pages that I went through. So hopefully that addresses your question. Okay, Matt, you say you calculated 30% utilization. That's a very low number. And it's not unheard of. Utilization ranges from about 25% to 75%. 30% is very low. Now, if you're like most service and support organizations, one of the things you're going to hear is that, well, we're different. We've got a whole bunch of people working on projects, or we've got, there's generally some reason why the utilization is low. But keep in mind that every other service desk in the world is subject to the same constraints that you are, and they also probably have agents that are working on projects and going through training and doing various other things like that. 30% is a low number. And unless it's a temporary number, meaning that it's going to be rectified in the near future and get back up to 45 or 50%, it may be an indication that you're overstaffed. That would be my, sort of top top-level diagnosis. Whenever I see a utilization number of 30%, it's a pretty good sign that you might have too many agents. Okay, from Roland. Will you also share the recorded session? Yes, we will. We'll send you a link to a recording of the webcast. From Steve, does this data assume all tools are in place? Remote desktop management ticket system? No, it doesn't assume anything, but those tools like remote desktop management and a ticketing system can greatly enhance first contact resolution rate in particular, first level resolution rate in particular, and also customer satisfaction and average handle time. So we don't assume anything. The data is what the data is. And some have that remote diagnostic or desktop management tool, some do not. Some have a good ticketing system, some do not. So we make no assumptions about that. But generally, when you do have good tools in place, you are going to see improvements in FCR and first level resolution rate and customer satisfaction. Okay, from Henry, what is the right frequency of satisfaction surveys? Should it be conducted on an ongoing basis? Yes, it should be, but you should never survey one person more than twice a year. So a good survey system is going to be sending out surveys on an ongoing basis, but you're not going to be surveying every single person that calls in. Usually you're going to be sampling like 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 or even 1 in 20 or 1 in 50. It depends on what your contact volume is. And you don't want, as I mentioned, to be surveying one person more than twice a year. Okay, from Victor, do you also measure customer satisfaction as a resolution end survey? I'm not sure what that means. Measure customer satisfaction as a resolution end survey. If you could clarify that for me, Victor, maybe clarify the question, and I'll see if I can answer it for you. But normally customer satisfaction surveys are sent after you close a ticket, if that's what you're asking. Okay, question from Miguel. How is agent utilization related to agent job satisfaction? At low levels, it's a U-shaped curve, an upside-down U, that is. When agents are 50% utilized, that's when their satisfaction is highest. When it starts to get too much higher than that, the satisfaction starts to drop off because they're pushed too hard. Particularly if the agent utilization gets above 60%, you'll see a drop off in agent job satisfaction because they're being pushed too hard. By contrast, if the agent utilization drops below 40%, usually they don't have enough going on and they get bored and they get disgruntled. And so if you can imagine an upside-down U, or an arch, if you will, and we plot agent job satisfaction on the y-axis and agent utilization on the x-axis. In terms of agent job satisfaction, the optimal utilization is about 50%. If it gets too much higher than that, it starts to drop off. Agent job satisfaction does. And if it gets too much below that, it will also drop off. So there is kind of a sweet spot with utilization. It's not the only thing, clearly, that drives job satisfaction. The big drivers are coaching, career pathing, and training. But agent job satisfaction, or excuse me, agent utilization is a secondary driver. Okay, from Mark, what's the best way to select a peer group for benchmarking? The marketing and advertising industry seems to have limited data available. Yeah, you don't need to worry about the vertical market, Mark, because that's pretty irrelevant. What matters more are the 4 factors that I identified earlier: scope, scale, complexity, and geography. That is, you want to find a group of other service desks that look like yours in terms of scope of services provided, scale, meaning volume of contacts they handle, complexity, a rough proxy for complexity is the handle time, and then geography. So I wouldn't worry too much about finding peers in marketing and advertising. That's the wrong way to go about finding a peer group. The right way to go about finding a peer group, regardless of industry, is scope, scale, complexity, and geography. There are resources on our website that talk about peer group selection. We've got a white paper on dynamic peer group selection. We also have sample benchmarking reports that talk about peer group selection. So you can find additional resources on our website that might help you in terms of identifying an appropriate peer group. From Kyril, how do you formulate questions about satisfaction? Is it a simple question, are you satisfied with the support, not satisfied, satisfied, very satisfied, or is it something more sophisticated? It's slightly more sophisticated, but not a lot. You want your customer satisfaction survey to be simple. We suggest no more than 5 questions. Some of those questions are going to address things like the level of courtesy and professionalism of the agent, the timeliness of the response and resolution, the quality of the response, meaning did they actually solve the problem. But the final question on any customer satisfaction survey ought to be, overall, how satisfied were you with your service desk experience? We recommend a scale of 1 to 5. 5 says, very satisfied. 1 says not satisfied at all. That's generally what we recommend. And now I'm greatly simplifying. We could do a whole full day discussion on customer satisfaction techniques, questions, how do you avoid survey bias, how do you deliver the survey, do you do the flash survey on the phone, do you do the oral interview survey, or do you do the email survey or the snail mail survey? There's a lot of nuance tied up in that. So if you want more information, you can either call MetricNet or you can send us an email at info@metricnet.com. Another question from Miguel, is not better to use the median rather than the average to make benchmarking? The median, the average is the arithmetic average of a group of numbers, and the median is the data point where half the data is above that and half the data is below that. You could make an argument for either one of them. Most of these distributions are asymmetrical, meaning unlike a normal distribution, which is symmetrical, it looks the same on the right as it does on the left, and the median and the mean are exactly the same thing. Most distributions in service and support are not symmetrical, yet the median and the mean oftentimes are pretty close to each other. So you could probably make an argument for using the median or the mean, but most people relate more easily to the mean score, meaning the average, the arithmetic average, which is why we use that. Let's see, from Alberto, any tools recommended to use? No, we don't recommend specific tools. We stay out of that fray. We're essentially vendor neutral is what I'm saying, Alberto. There are a lot of good tools out there, regardless of whether you're looking for a trouble ticket system, or a knowledge management system, a remote diagnostic tool, whatever it might be, but we do not recommend individual tools. Okay, from Miguel, when you say customer satisfaction, do you also mean customer experience management? Well, customer experience management is different than customer satisfaction. Customer satisfaction is the metric. Customer experience management is the process of managing the customer to ensure that that metric is good. In my opinion, customer experience management is nothing but a highfalutin euphemism for taking care of the customer. It's just a new word for doing what you're supposed to do anyway. Be responsive, try to resolve on first contact if possible, try to resolve at first level if possible, give the customer courteous service, professional service. So this whole customer experience management thing is nothing more than kind of a highfalutin new cliche for just doing what you're supposed to do when it comes to managing your customers. Okay, next question from James. Very good call. Okay, thanks, James. From Lauren, how do you push customer satisfaction down to the agent based on tickets that they handle and get response on? Yes, that's exactly right, Lauren. And I'm glad you brought that up, because when I was talking about the agent scorecard and looking at their customer satisfaction, that does assume that you can trace a satisfaction survey back to the agent that handled that particular ticket. So, and most customer satisfaction survey tools now, whether they're integrated into your ticketing tool or not, most of them do tie back to an individual ticket. That ticket is tied to an individual agent. So thanks for bringing that up. You really do want to be able to tie customer sat back to individual agents, because this helps you understand which agents are delivering high levels of customer experience and those that are not. And that way you can pinpoint where to focus your coaching time and attention. For those agents that are not delivering a high quality experience, you can target them for coaching that will allow them to improve their customer satisfaction scores. From Lauren, how do you find peer groups to benchmark? Well, you can go out and try and find other service desks that want to benchmark with you. What most organizations do, and I'm not trying to make a blatant sales pitch here, but what most organizations do is they come to a company like MetricNet and they say, we want to benchmark our service desk, can you help us? And the answer, of course, is yes. That's the most expedient way to do it. Okay, from Miguel, thanks. Let's see, from Matt, 30% overstaffed, thanks again. Okay, yep, so it sounds like you concur with me. Yeah, if you're at 30% utilization, you're overstaffed. From Yolanda, can we subtract the abandoned calls in the first 20 seconds? No, you can't. That's cheating. We find that done, Yolanda. Some people say, oh, we don't count any call abandoned in the first 10, 20, 30 seconds. That's cheating. An abandoned call is an abandoned call. It doesn't matter why it was abandoned. It might be abandoned because the person, somebody walked into their office just as they called you. But a true abandonment rate looks at all abandoned calls, not just calls that are abandoned in the first 10, or after 20 seconds or after 30 seconds. So we believe that a true abandoned abandonment rate does not allow any front-end leeway. You don't give yourself a 10-second cushion or a 20-second cushion or a 30-second cushion. An abandoned call is an abandoned call. Okay, so from Victor, when agents resolve the incidents, a survey is sent out to users. Do you use this as a form of measurement? Yes, of course. What happens when the end user does not respond to the survey? Well, Victor, that happens about 95% of the time. Most surveys do not get a response. That's just the way it works. So on an email survey, if you get a 5% response rate, you're doing really, really well, considering that the average is about a 2.5% response rate. So what the implication is that if you need to get 100 completed surveys a month, you probably need to send out about 1,000 surveys or 2,000 surveys. If you need 200 surveys per month, you need to send out a lot more. There are online calculators that will allow you to determine how many surveys you need to get back in a given period of time to get within, say, a 5% confidence interval on the result. I don't have the web addresses handy, but if you Google confidence interval for customer satisfaction surveys, there are sites there that have sample size calculators. It will tell you out of how many tickets you handle in a month, how many completed surveys you need in order to get statistical significance in your customer satisfaction survey. Okay, from YL, how can you manage the customer experience management to reflect it to the customer and increase your level? Let's see, how can you manage customer experience management, reflect it to the customer and increase your level? I'm not sure I understand the question, YL, but if I read between the lines, I think what you're saying is how do you convey what you're doing to the customer so that you get credit for it? In other words, how do you make the customer aware of all the great things you're doing so that you get a decent customer satisfaction score? That's how I'm interpreting your question. I don't know if that's right or not, but the best thing is just to handle the tickets effectively. Good first contact resolution rate, reasonable resolution time, reasonable response time, and then outbound messages to all stakeholders, independent of the tickets, outbound messages through FAQs, through newsletters, through periodic webcasts like this, which increasingly service desks are doing for their companies. They do a weekly or a monthly webcast that any end user can dial into to find out what the service desk is doing. We have a full-day workshop on managing the message, meaning how does a service desk make sure that they get a proper message out there and that they in fact, get credit for the good things that they're doing. And there's lots and lots of things that you can do. I've mentioned a few of them. A newsletter is a very smart thing to do. Having these periodic webcasts, either weekly or monthly, having brown bag sessions where you invite people in and they ask you questions, having an FAQ site, all of those things help to enhance the image of the service desk and help drive higher levels of customer satisfaction. Okay, next question. It looks like the last one, so if you have other questions, anybody, please type them in now. This question is from Lauren. So if the ticket is touched by Tier 2 or 3, then you cannot push that survey result to the agent. Yeah, that's true, Lauren. If you've got a ticket that starts at level 1 and then it goes to a different level, say desktop support, and then to some other level, if it's touched by multiple levels within the organization, the level of satisfaction is going to reflect the experience that that end user had across those multiple levels. So you're going to get, in those situations, you're going to get a mix of, it's not going to be a true reflection of what happens at level 1. I think the point that you're making, and I would concur with that point. If a ticket gets passed through different levels before being resolved, the customer satisfaction survey, while still useful because it gives you a sense of how satisfied the customer was with the overall resolution process, the individual agent that handled that at level 1 cannot be held fully accountable for that customer satisfaction result. So to your point, what you want to do when you're tying CSAT back to an individual agent, you want to look at those tickets that were resolved at level 1 by that agent. That way they are fully accountable for that particular ticket. When it gets pushed out and is touched and handled by multiple levels within the organization, it starts to get convoluted and it becomes unclear whether the result is good or bad, how much level 1 had to do with that. Okay. Are there other questions? That was the last that have been typed in, so if you do have other questions, please type them in now. Otherwise, we'll wrap up our webcast. Okay. Again, I just want to thank all of you for logging into our webcast today. Please remember to complete the brief survey that is going to pop up when you exit the webcast. This is a requirement if you wish to receive a copy of today's presentation. So again, thanks to everybody. Wow, almost all of you stayed on. It was a long webcast, but I appreciate the fact that all of you stayed on this long. I do hope that you found today's webcast to be informative and insightful. Thank you once again. Goodbye now.